Hey everybody, I'm Katrina, um, and thank you for being here. In my first video, A Guide to Developing Resilience and Calm, I talked a bit about fear and what happens in our brain when we find ourselves there. So when we find ourselves experiencing fear, what happens? In this video, I want to dive deeper into this topic. So my artwork here, who's in charge of your thoughts, the monkey mind or you? And we're going to take a look at our old primitive brain versus our new logical brain. All right. So I don't want to talk about what's going on out there. I don't want to talk about the coronavirus and all of the ways that we don't have control of the situation, all the information that's coming at us, the misinformation, the propaganda, the sensationalism. I mean, what is really the truth? It's a waiting game to see how everything is really going to play out. However, what I do want to talk about is what's going on in here, in our mind, what we can do about it, what's going on in our brains during this time as a response to the information we are taking in, you know, that the information that's being directed at us. This is where we do have a choice. We do have control over our own response. It's a matter of taking personal responsibility for the things we can control, and then making decisions that bring us to a better, clearer, more resilient and reasonable perspective. The actions and behavior we then take will be laced with confidence and logic. This doesn't go to say that everything will be super easy. What it does mean is that we can learn to bridge the gap between a potential stress response and a conscious and grounded response that serves everyone involved, and then creating true and moral win-win situations. So I want to talk about the basic anatomy of the brain in order to gain clarity and understanding. I want to talk about how these different parts play a role in fear and overwhelm. Which part of our brain is talking, the monkey mind, or is it really us, our new logical brain? And then let's talk about how we can overcome the fear and overwhelm. It's always a solution. So I've been doing some daily, almost daily live mindfulness. I've been doing some daily live mindfulness sessions on Facebook and YouTube in order to help bridge this gap and bring more and more people out of the chaos of their own thoughts and into the embodiment of their true self. So these sessions bring the listener out of their thoughts and focuses their attention into their body. The mind isn't able to focus in two places at once. So when the mind is focused and paying attention to the physical body, it cannot serve the thoughts that create the stress response. So I put a link below to one of my daily live videos just so you can check it out. It's approximately 20 minutes. And you can also check out sootheyoursoul.com. I'll put that link below as well to see what else is going on. The brain is pretty fascinating, and it's really important to understand in order to feel a greater sense of control and calm, especially while life is feeling out of hand. As always, I am creating this video with the intention of providing awareness and support in the best way that I know how. So please note the words I speak are always based on my interpretation, my understanding of an idea and or concept. And it's all according to the facts and details that I have gathered in my search for the truth. There's always a chance that I could be wrong or missing some facts, and I'm always open to any thoughts and guidance that could bring me greater clarity and understanding. I seek to refine my thoughts as well as my emotions. The tools that I offer to you that you can participate with, that you can take with you and use moment to moment, day to day, they're the tools I've been using to develop myself, to establish personal responsibility, to take ownership of my life, and to respond with care and integrity to the world we live in. I'll do my best to provide as accurate and true information as I am capable of. Again, I'm always open to new and different points of view. It's always it's always a good idea to think for yourself. So it's always a good idea to go and search the information yourself. I'm offering guidance, but you need to come to your own conclusions. Take what you feel is valuable, and you can always leave the rest. All right, so just take a moment to feel your feet on the floor. Allow yourself to let go of the things you were doing before you got here, and give yourself the chance to be here and take in this information. Taking a couple deep breaths, because we might as well be present. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart reach the people who need to hear them. May I speak the truth with honor, respect, and integrity. May the people who hear these words find what they're looking for in them and allow it to spark their own divine guidance and creativity. So let's talk a bit about the anatomy of the brain and the functions of these different parts. So this is going to be a really, really basic lesson. I am not a neuroscientist, believe it or not. Let's talk about how these different parts play a role in fear and overwhelm, and then let's talk about how we can overcome the fear and overwhelm. So I'm going to just share my little diagram here. I enjoy creating artwork. I don't need all of it up here. So I'm going to talk about the brainstem, the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. And I'm just going to keep it really, really simple. So if you don't already have some basic brain anatomy, it's not going to be too much. I won't spend too much time here. So here's the diagram. So the first part I wanted to talk about is the brain stem. So here it is here. This is sometimes referred to as the monkey mind, the reptilian brain, the primitive brain. It's our animal instincts. It's the animal in us. Before we evolved to where we are today, this was what directed us. This is what kept us alive. When we lived in caves, this part of our brain took care of our most primitive needs. So even today, our most basic needs include survival and reproduction. And this part of our brain is its major function is to keep us alive and continue to reproduce our species. It's responsible for our automatic processes as well, such as the heart rate, digestion, and breathing. The things we don't need to think about doing, they just happen naturally. So if we're being chased by a bear, the last thing we need to be worried about is trying to make our heart pump or our lungs breathe. It just happens naturally for us. And then the blood is also automatically sourced to our extremities so that we can run or we can fight if necessary. And this is where we experience the fight or flight response. So when we perceive danger, we rely on this part of our brain for survival. So this is the old primitive brain. This is the monkey mind I was referring to in my first piece of artwork there. The second part we're going to talk about is the amygdala. So that's this little red area here. So the amygdala is just one part of the limbic system. So the limbic system I'm going to explore with my guest, Daniele Vassallo. He's going to join me on the next video. I believe it'll be posted Thursday or Friday, so April 2nd or 3rd, 2020. And so Daniele will be with me in the next video so that we can dive even deeper into the brain and its processes to create more education and understanding. So just very briefly, the amygdala is responsible for our emotions. So fear, anger, it's our emotional response to situations. When we perceive danger, our amygdala informs our emotional response to the situation. So like I said, this could be something like fear or anger, depending on our past trauma, our experiences, and our exposure. So it creates strong reactions in us. And then we respond, our behavior is according to our emotions. The final thing that I wanted to touch base on is our prefrontal cortex. So this is the front of the brain. This is our new logical brain. So this is something that has evolved over time. Our brains have developed over a long time to include this part of our brain. As we developed many tools and technologies and stopped needing to fear our environment, this part of our brain became more prominent to help us think and create. So we began to be able to take concepts and pull them together and evaluate the best choices, and then take action based on that. So we went from automatic response to deciding how we were going to respond. So reaction versus responding. The prefrontal cortex is where we process information and form logical and rational conclusions. We're able to look at all sides of a situation, concept, or idea. We're able to then understand it. Then we're able to make informed decisions and take logical action. And that also includes sound logical behavior. So what does this have to do with the current situation, and how does it play a part in fear and overwhelm? Here's what Gabor Mate has to say about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So Gabor says, when we have experienced trauma at a young age, we are much more easily triggered. The response is in different ways depending on how we were programmed in childhood. The response is not based on the actual facts and the actual realities. Their response is subjective and is based on the degree of fear they have been living with all their lives. The more fear-oriented they were in the first place, the more likely they are to panic right now. What we are seeing is a trauma response, and he's referring to the coronavirus. So he also says there's a heightened fear response, or a dissociated response. Dissociated response is where they are not in touch with their feelings. So when triggering events like fear happen, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that considers and makes decisions and choices, it responds with flexibility to situations. It's the rational, logical part of the brain. What happens in response to fear is it kind of goes offline. It leaves people functioning from their emotions, from their amygdala, rather than the reasoning part of their brain. And he says the amygdala actually enlarges when people are used to being more emotional. He then says it's exacerbated by social media and the infodemic. And what he means by infodemic is basically information overload. So the coronavirus, we're kind of perceiving it as a threat to our survival, or we are perceiving it as a threat to our survival. And so that kicks in the monkey mind, the primitive brain, our automatic need to try to survive. And many people are already dealing with trauma and anxiety before this thing even came along. So our responses to the situation are very important to look at. It's important to look at this on a day-to-day basis without this extra threat anyway. and awareness of what threatens us daily, and noticing that we are triggered and responding based on our need to survive is important for healing. What does a trigger look like? Sometimes it is an emotional outburst, like anger for no reason. It can be crying suddenly without realizing why you're crying. It could be chest pain, heart palpitations. You would know what it would be for you. Your stomach becoming upset. You know that you're being triggered in some way. So understanding what's behind our reactions and behaviors is the next step in healing. When we can gather the information and develop understanding about what is going on, we can then forgive ourselves for our behaviors and or our reactions, and then make some different choices. The reason I introduced the brain is in order to bring clarity, to bring understanding, to inform you that when we are feeling threatened, we automatically go into a defensive mode. We automatically become concerned with our survival. The fight-flight response is triggered from our primitive brain. Our amygdala is engaged, and we may become angry, fearful, and feel overwhelmed. We may react strongly and feel out of control, or we may shut down and want to hide and avoid the feelings. Avoiding the feelings can lead to behaviors that create dependencies such as alcohol, gambling, or food addictions, anything that numbs those feelings. Also, the avoidance is what can create the physical anxieties, the heart palpitations, or that tunnel vision. Our thoughts have control. Our thoughts about our survival is what creates the trigger. So check that. It's our thoughts about our survival that creates the trigger. We've moved up to the top of the food chain. We no longer leave our caves to hunt and then find ourselves being hunted. So we don't experience fear because we may be attacked by that bear when we're trying to feed our family. We experience fear because of our thoughts about a situation. We experience fear because we go to the local grocery store and see empty shelves. And we tell ourselves, our thoughts tell us that there may not be enough for our family. And that's where we have the reaction. It is our thoughts that create the threat. Our thoughts, our memories, our interpretation of events that create the fear and overwhelm. And it's our thoughts focused on either the past or the future that we are responding to. We're not actually responding to this moment. How many times have you been invited to a party and the anticipation alone of walking into the room, or the anticipation of whether or not you're going to know anyone, that anticipation causes you stress and potentially even keeps you from going to the party at all? How many of those times that you felt that did you end up going to the party and then really enjoying yourself? Or how many times have you maybe not heard from somebody when you were supposed to? Maybe they were supposed to show up at your house at a certain time, and they're maybe running late. How many times have you made up a story in your mind that maybe they're lying in a ditch somewhere, to find out that they were just stuck in traffic? I mean, this happened more often probably before we had cell phones, but it's still something that we wonder where people are, and we can make up a story in our mind about where they are. And we created this thought, and it just isn't true. If we let our thoughts think us, then we are constantly subjected to patterns of thoughts that circle and circle, keeping us suffering and overwhelmed. We become stuck in a loop of anger, fear, or overwhelm, maybe avoidance, or whatever defense mechanism we've created for ourselves. we lose access to our prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain that allows us to be thoughtful, logical, and confident. And it may leave us feeling more hopeless instead. Who wants to be stuck here? Who really wants to suffer? Really? Does anybody want to suffer? Nobody really wants to suffer, but when we feel like we don't have control, that's what happens. When we don't have the reins on our thoughts, this is what can happen. When we let that primitive brain take charge, when we let our emotions take charge, we end up suffering. What I want to communicate is that by understanding this cycle and how everyone is the same, everyone is coping in some way, shape, or form, we're not victims to it. We don't have to stay stuck. So then how do we overcome the fear and overwhelm? How do we create a different response to this perception that we need to be in survival mode? What we can do is understand that our response is natural. We are literally wired to survive. We can begin to become aware of its effects on us in each moment, and we can choose to do something differently. So I'm going to talk to Daniel more about this in the next video, which will be released later this week. Like I said, Thursday or Friday. And I have more videos with more information planned, videos that will help develop more understanding from different perspectives. Like I said in the beginning of this, it isn't an easy process, but it is a necessary one. This is what we can do as our part of what's happening today in society. It's about what you can do right now with the things going on in the world and the virus threatening our survival. More and more people are going to have their trauma playing out. So you see it with the hoarding of toilet paper and food. More people are outwardly angry. More and more people are reacting in extreme ways. Relationships are being challenged, some even breaking down. On a bright side, some are getting stronger as they begin to realize what's truly important. And so that's the thing. What is truly important? What is truly important to you? Where are you finding meaning? What do you truly care about? You can do something. So what we can do is focus our attention on the present moment, not on the past, not on the future, but on the present moment. And we do this by focusing our attention inwards, focusing our attention down into our bodies, taking our attention off of our thoughts. We have the perfect opportunity for this because we're kind of stuck in our houses. So instead of finding more dependencies, we can do our work. We can do our inner work. We're not able to necessarily communicate with other people as much or see other people as much, connect with them, but we can do our inner work. So when we place our attention on our thoughts, if our thoughts aren't clear, healthy, and sound, we experience stress. And we know that we're not in the present moment. So if you think about a time when you felt sincere appreciation, if you can think of a time, when was the last time you felt sincere appreciation? What was going on? You had a child that was born, or somebody did something for you unexpectedly, and it was something you really needed in that moment. So what you'll notice when you focus on that is that the appreciation was there in the moment. You can go and access the memories. So like I just asked you to think of that time. You can access that memory to experience the appreciation, to experience that appreciation again, but its potency is mostly felt in the moment. When we see something beautiful, we experience that in the moment as well. We may try to capture it with cameras, but the pure joy is actually in that moment. Like I said earlier, our minds cannot focus in two places at once. So when we have our attention focused on negative thoughts, we're not in the moment. If we intentionally move our attention down into our body and focus on our breath, we cannot simultaneously have our attention on our thoughts. We can then feel relief, calm, and even relax away from the chaos of our minds. As we practice this, we then open up our ability to access the part of our brain that allows us to reason, use logic, and make sound decisions. We now have access to our prefrontal cortex, to our new logical mind. We have access to courage. Our thoughts become clearer, our thoughts become healthier, and our thoughts become more practical. We can be more creative and confident in our communication and in our choices. Again, how do we do this? Like I mentioned, I've created a number of basic mindfulness practices on my YouTube channel. They are free and accessible there. I put a link below to one of them. I guide you through the process so that you can see it's very basic and very easy. But I guide you through it so that you can experience what I'm talking about. I am also doing some private group sessions and private one-on-one sessions for people who want to dive much deeper, people who want to progress and get a more steady grasp on what I'm talking about and how to focus really into your body and take your attention off of your thoughts. It's hard to go as deep when I'm doing live sessions on Facebook or YouTube because people are going in and out and they don't have a chance to really build on what they're already learning. So what I'd like to do is work with groups and every day we can build on the practice so that you can really get comfortable being in the present moment. And then when overwhelm, stress, fear, anger, sadness hits, you can bring your attention back to your center more readily. So check out the links below for more information. Feel free to contact me with any questions. I'm happy to guide you in the right direction, especially if I don't have the answers. I'm happy to find somebody who does for you. Again, I will be talking to Daniele Vassallo on the next video where he will dive deep into the limbic system and how it plays a role in our emotional response to trauma. So Daniele is a psychotherapist who works mainly with first responders in Niagara. He specializes in trauma and anxiety and works with clients who have PTSD and addiction. Okay, so I'll see you soon. I hope you enjoy today. Be well, and while you're at it, be your own hero. You got this. Bye, everybody.